My talk today is on barriers to change. And I thought of this talk in terms of the barriers for doctors, the barriers for healthcare professionals, and what might stop them seeing this as relevant, or what might they not have come across in terms of their training, in terms of what is the power in plants. And then the second part of the talk is based on the application. That's the interesting bit. How do we do this in general practice? Because I've been doing this for about 4 years. In terms of the relevance, actually, just before I start, how many GPs are in the audience? Excellent. This is so appropriate then. So in terms of the relevance, WHO in 2016 brought out a study saying there's 4 simple risk factors that can decrease your risk of developing chronic disease by 80%. If this was a drug, it would be a blockbuster. Do you want to know what they are? We've got not smoking. We're doing that. Exercising at least 30 minutes a day. I think we encourage that. Not being obese. I think we measure BMIs, but I'm not sure we know what to do with it. And then healthy diet. What's a healthy diet? Where's your reference? Where do we get our information from? There must be a public body that tells us what's a healthy diet. And we do. We have the Food Safety Authority of Ireland. We have the food pyramid. This is from 10 years ago. And nicely they updated it in 2016 and they gave us this. It changes, the green bit goes to the bottom, so we should be eating more veg. I have 2 bugbears with this food pyramid. One is, pyramids usually make you aspire to the top. Really, the crop at the top. So I have suggested to them, could they turn it upside down? The second thing is, it's a pyramid presented as a triangle. Which means you underrepresent the bottom and you overrepresent the top. If you want to see this, the Australians copped onto this, so in 2013, they showed us a pyramid as a pyramid. And when you see it as a pyramid, you say, that's fruit and veg. That's grains. There's very little at the top. So we have an issue with presentation. We also have another issue, which is, in Northern Ireland, is a jurisdiction that's covered by the UK and Ireland, so we got 2 food pyramids. So they had the confusion that they had this as their food pyramid as well as ours. They changed to a food plate. And a food plate is a lovely representation because you usually sit down for a meal and you can see very clearly what you're meant to be eating. And they updated theirs in 2016, same as us, but 8 months earlier. And they came up with this. Very clearly, we got at least a third, more than a third fruit and veg, more than a third of whole grains. Interestingly, they dropped the dairy recommendation by 50%. They also, for the protein section, they said eat more beans and pulses as their first recommendation. And this disturbed me, so I contacted the Food Safety Authority. It took me 6 months. Phone calls, emails, and I got through to a head dietitian. And I said, tell me, how can 2 countries look at the same evidence and come up with totally different information? And one example I gave to her is I said, you say eat at least 5 portions of fruit and veg. The World Cancer Association says we should be eating 9 or 10. And I said, why don't we say that? And she said, well, what we do in public health is we look at the average diet in the average population and see can we move that just a little bit. Because a small change in big population is quite big. Oh. And the second thing I said to her was, well, I don't deal with populations, I deal with individuals. And in terms of individuals, is there any chance you could do 2 food pyramids? One for the average and one for the optimum. I want the ideal diet because that's what I'm trying to use as a goal for my patients. And if we look at the development of the food pyramids across the world, we've seen that in 2017, the Belgians listened to me. They turned the food pyramid upside down. Loads of veg. They actually have no separate dairy group. Dairy is part of animal products. They've taken processed meats and taken it off the pyramid, along with sugar and alcohol. And then in January this year, Canada updated their food plate. Very obviously, fruit and veg on the left, whole grains. And it's a bit blurry the slide, but you can see kidney beans, chickpeas, almonds, tofu. You've got at least 50% plant protein in there. So this is almost a plant-based diet. And then we've got the international acceptance in terms of 27 top academics from 16 countries got together and said, when we look at the evidence, when we look at the big population epidemiological studies, the randomized control trials, we find that this is the best diet, not just for the environment, for health also. And in this, the most interesting section is the protein section, so your green, red and blue. When you take that out, the red bit, which is beef, poultry, eggs, fish, it's minimal. And what we're pushing is legumes, nuts. And people don't know what legumes are, so you have to say the peas, the green beans, or lentils, chickpeas, you have to spell it out. But it's a huge change in the way we're eating. And this has confused people. We don't know where to start. The media is saying you should eat a bit of this and a bit of that. And in a way, there's several things in modern nutrition that I just want to touch on. One is we've got overconsumption. We all know this. We're over-consuming high-calorie foods. Most of these are saturated fat and refined and processed foods. And the confusing thing is partly saturated fat mainly comes from animal foods. And the animal foods, the corporations involved with that, keep saying it's not us, it's the processed food guys. And the processed food guys, who's maybe sugary drinks, they say it's not us, it's exercise. And they keep on passing the buck. But it's all those things. And then the other thing is what Connor's touched on is undernutrition. Most of the population aren't getting enough of the subtle micronutrients in the diet. I'm going to come to that. The other thing is the protein overemphasis. We historically, since the Second World War, have presumed that the difference between industrialized nations and poor nations was the protein gap. So we've actually changed our system of agriculture to push animal protein. And we've actually worked out that there isn't such a thing as protein deficiency. We have kwashiorkor is what we studied in college. Since the 70s, we've actually worked out that's a calorie deficiency. There is no condition of protein deficiency. And I don't know if any of you have anyone who's come in with protein deficiency. They're all looking for the protein. They're not even aware that every single plant contains protein. They're not aware that nature has created only one food, perfectly crafted for human consumption. Does anyone have any idea what that is? Breast milk. How much protein is in breast milk? 1%. 1% protein for the most intense growth period of human development, where we double our birth weight in 6 months. And then we've got isolated nutrients. This is a fault in modern society in terms of modern science. We assume if something's good, there must be something good within that thing. So we take it out and try and give it to people. So we've done several studies. We had, say, the Western Electric study showed that people who consumed a lot of carrots tended to get less lung cancer. So we said, what's in the carrots? And we thought, let's take out the orange thing, which is a carotenoid. There's 500 carotenoids found in foods, but we took out beta-carotene. We gave it to patients with lung cancer with more lung cancer cases. We've done the same with vitamin E. 73% more hemorrhagic stroke when we give vitamin E as an isolation. We found in the latest meta-analysis that omega-3 does not help cardiovascular disease. Maybe in the whole food, but not in isolation. So this is what I want to sell to you. I want to sell to you what is the power in whole foods and plants. What is the beneficial thing? It's not leaving out the others, it's what's hidden in these foods. So Connor's touched on it. Fiber. Fiber is only found in plants. There's no fiber in animal products. At least 80% of the Irish population is deficient in fiber. We know that it fills you. You will lose weight when you take more fiber. We know that it binds cholesterol, so you'll absorb less. We know that it binds sugar, so you'll turn food into a low glycemic food. It improves your bowel habit, decreases your It changes your gut bacteria. It gives you the right proportion of good bacteria, which is beneficial for health. But the point I want to make is it's micronutrient linked. When you get wheat, and you tear out the fiber, you remove the micronutrient. And what are these micronutrients? We're talking about oxidation again. So oxidation with an apple, we have the same thing in our cells. So we got these oxygen-free radicals that develop. So when you lose an electron, your oxygen becomes agitated, bumps around your cells, damages, provokes inflammation. And this is caused by stress, with It's caused by radiation, lack of exercise, but especially by diet. And what can we do for it? Antioxidants. If we get an antioxidant, put back the electron, we get healthy cells. Where do we find these? We find them in colour. And this is a complex slide, but really what it's saying, and it's US data, 80% of the Irish population, I would argue, very similar to there, lack colour. And it's 70 to 80% of each of the individual colours. And within these, there's more than 5,000 different chemicals. This is getting complex. You can't get your head around with that many. And all down the right side are all the multiple beneficial effects of these colourful antioxidants. We know some of them. We know about lycopene, found in tomatoes, helpful for prostate cancer. We know about luteins, helpful for macular degeneration, green vegetables. I mentioned earlier, we got beta-carotene found in orange vegetables, good for lung cancer. And we have studies that have said, where do we find them? Where's the best sources? So where do you think the best source is in vegetables? Anybody? So your greens, your brassicas, cruciferous vegetables, kale, spinach, Brussels sprouts, broccoli. If you think about it, the purpose of the plant is to grow. And to grow, it uses photosynthesis to create energy in its leaves. It has to take lots of sun energy every day, so it has to protect itself. So it fills its leaves full of antioxidants. And if we eat their leaves, we get loads of antioxidants. So your mum was right. Eat your greens. In terms of fruit, what's the best source? Brilliant. Berries. Raspberries, strawberries, blueberries are the highest. The antioxidant is in the pigment. If we think of the other purpose of plants, is to reproduce. And to reproduce, it has to shed, it has to spread its seed. And it spreads its seed often through the colour, attracts the pollinators and the bees and birds to spread that seed. So eating colour gives you the antioxidant. Which is better? Red or white onions? Red. Brilliant, you will listen. Which is better? Watermelon. We're not eating the skin, but we're eating the inside, but it's watermelon. What's Ireland's favourite vegetable? Brilliant. And we don't just take potatoes and deep fry them to decrease their antioxidant value and increase their fat. What's Ireland's favourite fruit? Bananas. Think of lack of colour. We love beige food. We go from white bread to pasta to banana. Well, what's better than blueberries? Anybody? What's better than blueberries? Walnuts. We should be eating a handful of nuts every day. It's been shown to increase life expectancy by 2 years. What's better than walnuts? Herbs. Okay? Herbs. Think of the intensity of the taste. The taste is your antioxidant. Oregano has 40 times more antioxidant potential than blueberries. What's better than spices. Cloves, allspice, cinnamon, turmeric. This is information that we didn't get when we were in medical school because we were basing everything on nutritional deficiency, avoiding nutritional deficiency. This is health enhancement. And I've actually gone through this with my patients this week and sat through them, put them through that test. And at the end, they get the message. They should be eating colour. So in terms of this, I want to move on to application. How do I use this? Okay? So as a GP, we use brief intervention. And we're not even aware we use it. Like, a patient will come into you and say, oh, doctor, I've given up smoking because of what you said last time. And I say, what did I say? Because I have no idea what I use. Because we do it specifically in that moment in time for that patient, we don't have a set standard. It's variable for the patient. So WHO has come up with the 5 A's model to help us. It says ask about the behaviour change, advise on what they should do, assess their willingness to change because you don't want to force it down their throat, assist them, and then arrange a follow-up. So maybe checking certain biomarkers. You might be looking for weight or blood pressure. I don't ask about diet. Because if you ask about diet, you get the standard response. Pretty good. They have no idea what the reference is. You might as well ask them, how's your driving? How's your love making? They have no idea. So I specifically say, I ask them about breakfast. I say, what's your usual breakfast? One question, very simple, takes a few seconds. And I know straight away, if they say, I have a fry, maybe white toast refined with some sugar, blueberries at least, or Cocoa Puffs, then we've got a problem. Well, if we move that on to a whole grain oat, blueberries, nuts, maybe sprinkling of cinnamon, I know that they're nutritionally in touch. And I will try and push them towards that. So that's all I do. I'm not saying give up anything, I'm encouraging this. If I've done breakfast or they're winning a breakfast, I say, what's lunch? And they'll say, oh, I take a chicken roll. And I say, is that white bread? And they'll say, yeah. And I say, oh, have you tried seedy brown bread? Maybe a bit of lettuce? Maybe tomato? Have you ever tried hummus? So it's just raising the game. It's not challenging them, it's seeing how much they can move. Sometimes I even give a green smoothie recipe. This is my yellow post-it. And I'll say, how can I increase the veg with a quick gain? If they just put together a bit of spinach, water, frozen banana, because it's much nicer cold, berries, handful of linseed, I am shocked that I have 75-year-old widows who now take this daily. Because I said it. There's no side effects, there's a whole load of benefits. So I'll tell you, in my experience, I get 3 scenarios, okay? So first is, and I'm trying to link these to diet. So a patient comes in with serious illness. So they come in with diabetes, they may have cancer, they may have heart disease. I can think of a patient I saw last year, he had a heart attack, went in, had a stent, 3 stents actually, and then came back 2 months later. No, he went in 2 months later, another heart attack, another 2 stents. When he comes in to see me, he's scared. He's feeling vulnerable. He is a taxi driver who's the only wage earner for a family of 5. He doesn't know what's going to happen next. He has no control over his life. He's on maximum medical therapy. So I feel obliged to share information with them. I say, do you know that Caldwell Esselstyn, Dean Ornish, they've reversed heart disease? Would you be interested? I get him to come down again with his wife, because she cooks, and we sit down and we talk it through. How can we raise the game in whatever way he wants to? I recommend that he watches Forks Over Knives. It's the quickest thing to do. Watch a documentary. He didn't have Netflix, so I have a copy that I loan him. And he goes off, he's changed his diet. He's not fully plant-based, but he's improved because I pushed him. Risk factors. So patients come in, maybe high blood pressure, maybe impaired fasting glucose, maybe high cholesterol. Thinking of a patient I saw at Christmas, he had a cholesterol of 8.3. And I said, oh, I'm very sorry, you're going to have to start medication. And he said, please, doctor, I don't want to do medication. Anything else? And I said, well, there's not many doctors who wouldn't treat you at 8.3, but you have to eat like a happy pear. I eat like a happy pear. So he goes off to the library, doesn't even buy the book. He gets it from the library, gets the happy pear book. He's a bachelor, 58-year-old. He doesn't like cooking. But he reads through the happy pear and he gets concepts. He changes his treats to nuts. He starts saying, I'll have soup for lunch. He starts increasing his colourful vegetables. He's still eating meat. He's still eating dairy. But he's changed his attitude. He came in to see me on Thursday this week. And his cholesterol's 5.1. And his whole attitude to life has changed. He's feeling more in charge of his life. And this is so rewarding for me. And then you've got the patients who come in with no problems. And you have to ask, why is it someone coming in with no problems to see me? But this is what happens in general practice. People would come in because they just had their 45th birthday, treating themselves to a medical. And they say, I was wondering, do I need my colonoscopy? And that's a way in. Because if you're worried about colon cancer, I can tell you several things in your diet that can help. They know somebody who incidentally was found to have a blockage in the artery and needed a stent. Do I need one? That's a way in. And then there's patients who come in and I can't link it to anything. So I'll use the information that we saw earlier in terms of the food pyramids. I'll say that the Eat Well guide in the UK, or the more recent Eat Lancet guide, says we should be eating pulses. We know that pulses decrease your risk of heart disease by about 20 to 30%. They decrease your risk of diabetes, decrease your risk of colon cancer. We even have a study that says if you add a handful of pulses to your diet and change nothing, within 8 weeks you lose weight. Everyone loves that. And if they don't know what to do, I give them a sheet of my tried and tested simple recipes to know how to start. So there's all these ways that we can get in within practice to push their diet. I'm going to tell you another story. Had a patient, black African man, came in to see me, hypertension for the last 5 years, and he's on 2 medications. And he came in to see me this time last year and he says, Dr. Allman, I want to stop my medication. And I says, you can't stop your medication. And he goes, I'm sick and tired. And I said, well, with any chronic disease, you have to keep taking them for life. But I put in one caveat. I said, unless you're happy to radically change your diet. Using stress management. So full lifestyle approach. And he says, I'm ready. And I said, okay. I said, I know there's a study done on sausage McMuffins, a McDonald's study. It shows that within 20 minutes of consuming the saturated fat in a sausage McMuffin, your arteries tighten. And they stay tight for 4 hours. And then you often eat another saturated fat, which stiffens your artery for another 4 hours. But if you eat green leafy veg, the nitric oxide release opens your arteries within 20 minutes and stays open for 4 hours. And by that I was selling to him the fact that your blood pressure is closely related physiologically to what you're eating. He bought it. He said, okay, give me some tips. I gave him a page, which I usually give, plant-based diet page with all the resources. And he went off and came back. I said come back in 2 months. He came back in 2 weeks, feeling dizzy. His blood pressure was low. I had to stop one of his medications. But the interesting thing was, he didn't cook before. He was loving cooking. He was enjoying his food. He was that passionate about it. He was bumping into friends with diabetes and nearly making them plant-based the next day. He was fascinated that his son, who didn't eat any vegetables, was stealing bits of lettuce off his plate. But interestingly, he said, I'm not vegan. I'm not vegetarian. I'm just plant-based. Because he saw this not as an ethical thing, but a health reason. And I had to tune up his diet, and then he was having sweets, treats, and I was able to fine-tune that. And he came back 3 months later, blood pressure low again. We stopped his medication completely, and he stayed off. And this is so rewarding for me, but even more so for him. He's now in charge of his destiny, and it's not just his blood pressure we're having. Because one of the barriers to change is ignorance or information. If patients don't know about this, they can't change their behavior. If doctors don't know about this, they can't change patients' behavior. If doctors know about this but don't practice it, they're very unlikely to change their behavior. We know from studies that obese doctors or smoking doctors are 70% less likely to tackle those behaviors in their patients. And I can think of sometimes the non-sharing of this information is very detrimental. I remember a patient coming into me, discharged from the hospital with colon cancer, 2 years post-colectomy, and told I was following him up. He was left to me. I thought I didn't know what to do. He was sitting in front of me, and I said, well, my usual question, what do you normally have for breakfast? And he said, a fry. And I said, do you not know the WHO guidelines in 2015 said that processed meats is a cause of colon cancer? And he said, no, nobody's told me. And I thought, isn't this a pity? that no one takes responsibility to share this information with the patient. The next barrier, that of taste. Everyone is scared of losing their pizza, their ice cream, their chicken burger. We eat really for taste. And the only innate, natural taste we have is that for breast milk, the sweetness of breast milk. Everything else is acquired. But we have these biological mechanisms in our brain, an impulse where dopamine is released with sugar and fat. It's a pleasure chemical, the same as cocaine and sex generates. And this keeps us coming back for more of these foods. The food industry has realized if it can take sugar and fat and salt and stick it into these hyper-palatable foods, we get addicted very quickly. And we come back for more. We're not even conscious. Most of what we do is not conscious. Brian Wansink, a social scientist in the US, has worked out that we make 200 food choices a day. And 90% of them are not conscious. But tastes change. It takes a few weeks, maybe a few months, and your tastes change. You decrease the receptors and you appreciate less salt, sugar, fat. And I know from personal experience, 3 months after going plant-based, I remember being in the kitchen at work and there was a penguin chocolate bar. This dreamy food from my childhood. And I snuck a little bite and it tasted like plastic and I had to spit it straight out. And straight away the emotional connection I had with this food was broken. And that was proof for me that my taste had changed so radically. The other barrier is that for skills, time. It's hard to be whole food plant-based and not cook. You have to learn new recipes. You have to learn what are pulses and legumes and how do you cook whole grains. Options are changing, but I really think people need to learn recipes. Last case to introduce the last barrier. This is a 50-year-old lady, a patient of mine with bipolar disorder, who came in to see me last year. She's a BMI of 40, 110 kilos. She smokes 40 a day. And she came in to see me just for a routine medication review. And she looked different. I says, what happened? And she says, I've lost 4 stone. And I said, really? Well, how'd you do that? I went vegan. And I went, why'd you do that? And she said, well, my daughter's living with me and she has gone vegan and I do the cooking. I said, so how do you feel? She says, I'm scared. I'm not sure when I'm going to stop losing weight. My other doctor has told me I better stop. Her BMI is still 30. My uncle has told me, without meat and dairy, you can't have a nutritionally adequate diet. My friends have told me I must be missing loads of nutrients. So as her doctor, I felt it was my job to say, well, what are you eating? Was it a crappy vegan diet? But it was pretty good. It was whole food, it was legumes. So I was able to commend her on that, and then I had to say, could you be nutritionally deficient? Are you taking your B12? So made sure she was taking her B12. Well, that was sorted. I said, I want to be her advocate. I want to support her. I gave her a copy of Michael Greger's How Not to Die, because she had no source of information. She'd never even seen the documentary. The only question she had for me was, do they really keep the dairy cows pregnant? Because her only source of information was a vegan magazine delivered to her daughter. But it amazed me that this woman, I've never had a woman in my life who comes in and incidentally has lost 4 stone in weight and is unhappy. And it brings up this barrier of social pressure and fear. If your family don't eat the same way as you, it's really hard to maintain this. If you have to make 2 sets of meals and 3 sets of meals. If your friends don't eat the same way as you, it's hard to socialize. Most of our celebrations are around food, and it's often meat, and it's often refined, sugary things. But despite all that, I want us to focus on the positive. This isn't about a restrictive way of eating. This is about enhancing the nutritional value of our foods. And in terms of general tips to leave you with, I want you to remember diet is relevant, We've heard that all today. There is an average diet, and then there's the optimal diet for the most trusted professions. Regularly surveys say that doctors are so trusted. What we say counts. If we can encourage whole plants, push colour, flavour, ask about breakfast. It's a simple question. Give out recipes. This is where we bring this to the next level. And I would say that I feel we have to lead by personal example. As Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. And at the moment, we have a healthcare crisis, chronic disease increasing, we've got a climate crisis. We need urgency, we need change. And as with any big change, any paradigm shift, as Martin Luther himself knows, he says, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. And I mean that in terms of any change we can make for ourselves or for our patients is beneficial. Because I too, like Martin Luther King, I have a dream. That one day, plant-based diets will be practiced by all doctors, that we will have more evidence to add to the evidence we have about these diets, that we will have more choices in shops and restaurants, so that we can all live healthier in a more sustainable world. Because this information isn't new. We've known about it for millennia. As Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. Thank you.